Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the really weird relationship between our minds and time itself. We're going to look at why an hour can sometimes feel like a minute, and how a simple mistake about physics can, believe it or not, point us toward a much deeper truth.
You know that feeling, right? Maybe you're an athlete, totally in the zone, a musician just lost in a piece of music, or maybe you're just deep into a project at work. You've probably felt time itself seem to stretch and bend all around you. Well, that feeling of being completely sucked in, it's not just some random thing. It actually has a name, and scientists have been studying it for a long, long time. It's called a flow state. This idea was really brought into the mainstream by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He described it as this amazing peak experience, where you're so involved in what you're doing that literally nothing else seems to matter. Your sense of self just kind of fades into the background, and your perception of time, it goes completely haywire. And that time distortion is the really wild part. Sometimes you look up and an entire afternoon has just vanished. Poof. But other times, especially in these really intense, high-stakes moments, a single second can feel like it's stretching out forever, packed with detail. So this strange bending of time, it led one writer to a really fascinating, super creative idea. An idea that connected this psychological state to, of all people, Albert Einstein. The theory went kind of like this. When you're in a flow state, your brain is firing on all cylinders, right? It's processing information at this incredible speed. So the question was, what if that mental speed up had a real physical effect on time itself? What if time doesn't just seem to slow down, but for you, in that moment, it actually does? And when you lay it out like this, you can see why it's such a compelling idea. On the left, you've got your own experience in a flow state. On the right, you've got the guts of Einstein's special relativity. They look almost identical. Get faster, time gets slower. It's a beautiful analogy. It just feels right. But as neat as that connection seems, the real, hard mechanics of physics tell a very different story. The idea, it turns out, is a mistake. But, and this is the important part, it's a very productive mistake. So here's the key thing you gotta understand. Time dilation in physics is all about your velocity through space. It's a fundamental feature of our universe that really only kicks in when you're moving close to the speed of light. Your brain cells firing faster, no matter how fast they're going, aren't physically moving your head through space-time at those kinds of speeds. It's not the same thing at all. The source material calls this a false cognate, which is just a perfect way to describe it. It's like two words from different languages that look and sound the same, but mean totally different things. The ideas have the same shape, for sure, but they are made of completely different stuff. Okay, so the physics is wrong, but the idea is productively wrong because that initial gut feeling that something real and profound is happening to how we experience time, that part is absolutely correct. The intuition was pointing at a real phenomenon. It just grabbed the wrong explanation off the shelf. So if it's not physics, then what is going on inside our heads? Well, for a more accurate picture, we have to switch from physics over to neuroscience. Instead of relativity, scientists talk about internal clock models. These are theories that basically say our personal sense of time is tied directly to how much our brain is processing. The more events or snapshots our brain can cram into a single second of actual clock time, the longer that second is going to feel to us. It's a really simple chain of events when you think about it. You get into a state of intense focus. That causes your brain to process way more neural events per second. And the result? Your personal experience of that moment feels expanded, richer, and subjectively a whole lot longer. And this is why it's so important. This model helps explain that classic slow motion feeling people talk about during accidents. That's just adrenaline kicking the brain into overdrive. It explains why a professional athlete seems to have an eternity to line up the perfect shot. And of course, it brings us right back to the flow state, where that intense focus is literally changing the texture of time for you. But the story doesn't just end with neuroscience. That first gut instinct wasn't just about our perception of time. It was pointing towards something even bigger, something that opens up a really profound philosophical insight. So, let's ask a crazy question. What if our linear experience of time, past, present, future, isn't a fundamental reality that we're just living in? What if it's something our own minds are constantly and actively building moment by moment? From that point of view, deep states of concentration, like meditation, are doing more than just tweaking our internal clock. They might actually be interrupting the very machinery that builds our sense of time, giving us a peek behind the curtain at what reality might be like without that filter. Buddhist philosophy actually has a whole vocabulary for this. Samskrita refers to our everyday, conditioned, constructed reality, and that includes our normal experience of time. But it also points toward asamskrita, the unconditioned, unconstructed raw material, the ground of being from which everything, including time itself, emerges. And this is where we have to admit the limits of language. Words like unconditioned are just pointers. They're like that famous saying, they're a finger pointing at the moon, not the moon itself. They're just a raft to help us get across the river, not the destination. And this brings us right back to the beginning. That first wrong idea about Einstein and flow states, it was actually an intuition pointing in the exact right direction. It sensed that the shift in time was about something fundamental. It just picked up the wrong vocabulary. It grabbed a physics textbook when it really needed a philosophy one. And so that leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. If our everyday experience of time is a mental construction, then what lies on the other side? What is reality really like before our minds assemble it into the familiar story of past, present, and future?